chapter, 7 to 9% of the test. Really, really important chapter. You want to know it really well. Overall, we learned three big ways: classical conditioning, operant conditioning, and social learning. Remember, conditioning means learning. There's a couple others like insight, but these are the big three right here. So, classical conditioning, that's Pavlov. And in learning, acquisition is the term for learning, and extinction is the term for unlearning. All right, classical conditioning, remember, think of the dog and you have a stimulus and a response. The UCS is unconditioned, unlearned. UCS, unconditioned stimulus would be food, and an unconditioned response would be saliva. No learning there. Then Pavlov put a neutral stimulus in front of the food, and it led to the slobbering. So it was a bell, food, slobber. This is all unconditioned. And then one time he said bell, and then it slobbered. Remember the classical conditioning, the response is always the same. The key question is what's causing it. If this slobber is caused by food, that's an unconditioned response. If this slobber is caused by food and a bell, we still have this food here, that's an unconditioned response. If this saliva is caused by a bell, that's weird, that's unnatural, that's unlearned, that's conditioned, that's a conditioned response. Little Albert's a good example of this. They had a rabbit and a loud noise. And so it went rabbit, bang, and then the kid was afraid. And then after a while, rabbit, fear. What happened was the rabbit should not cause fear. Fear caused by a rabbit is unlearned. This would be a conditioned response. This is the response, and that's the conditioned stimulus. Then if you can learn one thing, you can apply it to others. That's called generalization. Little Albert, little cute guy, became afraid of Santa Claus and all white animals. That's called generalization. And when you can tell the difference, that's called stimulus discrimination. And then you can unlearn something. If you learn something, you can unlearn it. And so what happens with this is that if you present the conditioned stimulus, the learned stimulus, the bell, over and over and over again without the unconditioned stimulus, bell, 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 no food. After a while, it can be unlearned. That's called extinction. But it might pop up every once in a while. That's called spontaneous recovery. So every once in a while, that bell is going to make that dog think about that. All right. Then there is another guy to be aware of named Garcia, and he took these principles, but he discovered something that we have biological predispositions. We learn some things really fast, things that involve taste. If you get sick from a food one time, you learn not to want that food, and that's Garcia's taste aversion. All right, so there's applications for this. They put poison on a sheep. The coyote ate the sheep, and then they got sick, and the coyotes didn't eat sheep anymore. All right, so that's UCR. You want to know those really well. Then humans, we learn a lot. Now, operant conditioning. Operant conditioning, how many of you are planning on going to college? Okay. We did that in class all the time. You learn by operating. Classical conditioning is just around you. You just pick it up automatically. You don't really think about it that much. Operant conditioning, they're both associative learning. You're associating two things. Classical conditioning, you're associating the stimulus with the response, or the neutral stimulus. Operant conditioning, you're associating an action with a reward or a punishment. Okay, shaping is not part of operant conditioning, but it's the way we train a dog. It's a step-by-step reinforcement or reward. Shaping, very important concept. You want to know that well. Thorndike is not operant conditioning. He's the guy that says positive behaviors are rewarded. Skinner's our guy. Operant conditioning is from Skinner. He's from the Behavioral School of Psychology. He's all about reward and punishment, and that's the environment, and that's learning. He says everything is from the environment, from rewards and punishment. Remember, a reinforcer is a reward. It increases the frequency of the behavior. It's always good. It reinforces a behavior. It makes it stronger. Punishment decreases the frequency of a behavior. It's always a bad thing. You don't like it. All right, this gets tricky, but here we go. Positive and negative. All you do is positive, you're going to add. Negative, you're going to remove. Positive reinforcement, you're going to give something and you're going to like it. Candy, a grade, food. Negative reinforcer, you're going to remove something, but you're going to like it. So if there's a stick in your eye, I take the stick out, you'll like that. Study for the test, I'll take the stick out. Taking your phone away would be a punishment, not a reinforcer. So just remember, reinforcers are good, positive or negative, you add or take away. All right, negative reinforcers. Aspirin removes pain. Ding, 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 ding. Seatbelt removes the noise. Those are negative reinforcers. It increases the frequency of the behavior by removing something. All right, part of this also, of reinforcement and Skinner, are contingencies for reinforcement or schedules. Here's what this means. Punishment, right away. Dog pees on the corner, right away you punish him. You don't wait a week to punish. That's punishment. Reinforcer has schedules, timing. The two big ones are continuous reinforcement is just like it sounds. Every time you do an action, it's reinforced a vending machine. $1 chips, $1 chips, $1 chips. A good question on this is, this type of behavior is very easy to extinguish. If you put $1 in and no chips, you probably won't put a second dollar in. You just extinguished it. Big concept here. Be ready for this one. Partial or intermittent reinforcement is you do something. Sometimes it's reinforced and sometimes it's not. A slot machine, a lotto ticket. Very hard to extinguish. I'll win the next time. I'll win the next time. So continuous versus partial reinforcement. Okay, then fixed and variable ratio. Fixed just means it's predictable. Variable means it's unpredictable. Interval is by time and ratio is by amount. So if you make $10 an hour, that's predictable. Fixed, it's by time. All right. Intrinsic, and let's do that later on the motivation chapter. Final way of learning, observational learning. You don't have to be rewarded. You can learn by watching your parents, watching your teachers, watching other adults. You can learn. So observational learning is called social learning. Bandura is the OG of this one. It involves modeling or watching people. All right. Know learning really, really well. Those three types should make sense to you. Classical conditioning, operant conditioning, observational learning are the big three. Latent learning just means you can learn without a reward. They found that rats sometimes would go through the maze even though there was no reward. Sometimes you'll just do stuff out of curiosity. And insight learning is the answer will just come to you suddenly. Okay. Know learning really well.